I told my aunt, standing right over my father's casket, at his own funeral, that he had cut her out of his will entirely. And yeah, I know how that sounds, but you weren't there. You didn't hear what she said first. So let me back up a little, just enough so this makes sense. My dad, Ron, passed away 6 weeks ago after a long fight with heart disease. He was 63, which is too young, and he knew it was coming, which meant he had time to get his affairs in order. He did. He was meticulous about it. That was Ron's spreadsheets for everything, labeled folders, nothing left to chance. His sister, my Aunt Deb, is a different story. Deb is the kind of person who borrows money with a handshake and returns it with a story about why she can't quite manage it right now. She and my dad had a complicated relationship. They were close when they were younger, genuinely close, but over the last decade or so things had shifted. There were loans that never came back. A falling out over my grandmother's estate, Deb had contested it, accused my dad of influencing their mother, things that were said that you don't really unsay. They'd gotten to a kind of cold truce by the end. Holiday texts, the occasional phone call, surface stuff. What I didn't know, what none of us knew until Dad's lawyer walked us through everything about 3 weeks before the funeral, was that Deb had been written out of his will completely. Not reduced, not a token amount. Zero. The lawyer said it had been updated 18 months ago. Dad never mentioned it to me. My mom knew. My brother Marcus knew. I was the third person to find out, and I was asked, very specifically, not to bring it up at the funeral. My mom said, let's just get through the day. I agreed. I meant it when I said it. The funeral was hard, obviously. But it was also fine, mostly. People came, people cried, people said the right things. And then there was Deb. She arrived late, which, okay, traffic. But she also arrived loud. Loud in that performing grief way where every hug becomes a scene and every memory she shared with someone was somehow longer and more central than anyone else's. I watched her work the room and I kept my mouth shut. Then she found me by the casket. And this is the part I keep turning over in my head because what she said, I don't know if she meant it as a dig or if she is just genuinely that unaware. She put her hand on my arm and she said, you know, your father always told me I was the one person who really understood him. I was the one he came to. And then, softer, almost like an aside, I just hope he remembered that when it counted. I looked at her. I said, what does that mean? And she said, and I want to be precise here, I just mean I hope he took care of the people who were actually there for him. Family is family. She was smiling when she said it, this little knowing smile, like she was already calculating, and something in me just snapped. I heard my own voice say, very quietly, he did take care of his family, Deb, you're not in it. She stared at me. I said, he updated the will a year and a half ago, you're not in it, at all. The smile disappeared. Her face went through about 4 different things in about 2 seconds. Then she said, loud enough that 2 people nearby turned around, excuse me? And I said, I think you heard me. Then I walked away. My mom found me in the hallway about 4 minutes later. I could tell from her face she already knew. Deb had gone straight to her. My mom didn't yell, she doesn't yell, but she said, I asked you not to do this today, I asked you one thing. And she was right, she had asked me one thing. Marcus came and found me after and he was less controlled about it. He said, what were you thinking? This is Dad's funeral. Whatever Deb does or doesn't deserve, today wasn't the day. And I get that, I do. But here's where I keep getting stuck. Deb was already angling. That comment wasn't grief, it was positioning. She was laying the groundwork for a conversation about money at my father's funeral before he was even in the ground. Was I supposed to just let that happen? Let her spend the next week thinking she had something coming, building herself up to demand something that isn't hers? My mom says I made a painful day about something petty. Marcus says I blindsided a grieving woman, and yeah, Deb is grieving, even if she's also calculating. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. Deb herself sent me a message 2 days later that said I was cruel and that she would never forget what I did. She also, separately, asked my mom whether the will could be contested. A few weeks after the funeral, she reached out to the lawyer directly. So that's where we are. My mom is still barely speaking to me. Deb is apparently consulting someone about her options. And I'm sitting here wondering if I was protecting my family or just losing it at the worst possible moment and calling it protection. What I keep coming back to is this. My dad spent 18 months of his life while he was sick, while he was tired, while he was managing medications and doctor visits and probably fear, deciding that Deb did not deserve to be in his will. He made that choice deliberately, and at his funeral she was already circling. I said something true at a bad time in a bad place and now I'm the villain of the story. Maybe I am. Or maybe there are things worth saying even when the timing is terrible. I genuinely don't know anymore. So, am I wrong here? Honestly though, what would you have done? Comment below.